Hey, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today. So my name is Adrian Wu. I'm a program manager here at the Global Taiwan Institute, and I'm also the host of our cultural policy podcast, Taiwan Salon, which looks at soft power, cultural policy, and cultural diplomacy between Taiwan and the rest of the world. So first, to give you a little of an introduction about GTI, in case this is your first time coming to our events. The Global Taiwan Institute is a 501c3 think tank dedicated to insightful, cutting-edge, and inclusive research on policy issues regarding Taiwan and the world. GTI's mission is to enhance the relationship between Taiwan and other countries, especially the United States, through policy research and programs that promote better public understanding about Taiwan and its people. And to do this, we have a number of different programs. We have our Global Taiwan Brief, which is a bi-weekly publication. We also have our public seminars, which this is one of them. And we have our annual symposium, which is our flagship program, which just happened in October. So feel free to check out the recording online of that. We also host a number of podcasts, including GTI Insights, Taiwan Security Review, and Taiwan Salon, my own podcast. These programs also include events such as our event today, and I would like to thank the staff and interns for making this event possible, as well as the board and our advisors for their support in our programs. This event is also made possible with support from the Taiwan Foundation for Democracy. So now to just kind of transition into the information about our event today. So our event is called Connecting Taiwan and the World Through LGBTQ Rights. So for the event summary, Taiwan has steadily been distinguishing itself as a free and open democracy that champions human rights, to include LGBTQ plus rights, as seen in Taiwan's 2019 legalization of same-sex marriage, which has placed the island at the forefront of LGBTQ plus rights and issues among states in Asia. This has also been accompanied by the emergence of Taiwan's tongzhi, people-to-people diplomacy, which has allowed Taiwan to leverage its protection of LGBTQ plus rights to enhance its international reputation, to strengthen connections with like-minded allies that value LGBTQ plus rights, and to build new civil society partnerships. Moreover, Taiwan's success in legalizing same-sex marriage has led some to wonder if Taiwanese activists can help regional activists advance same-sex marriage legalization within their own country. Placing Taiwan within a global context, this panel will aim to look at current challenges that Taiwan's LGBTQ plus activists still face in Taiwan, and how this landscape influences, as well as is influenced by, global partnerships. So I will do the introduction of each person before they speak. We'll do the longer introduction for each person before they speak, but just a brief overview. So with a panel consisting of academics and practitioners, we have John Shi-Cheng-Du from Taiwan Tongzhi Hotline Association. We'll begin our panel by outlining the work of Taiwan's LGBTQ plus activists and strategies used in Taiwan to push forward LGBTQ plus rights. Addressing how gender representation in politics relates to policy changes, Young-In Lee from California State University, Sacramento, will then discuss the role of female leaders in advocating for same-sex marriage. And then turning the focus to transnational concerns. Piper from Right International will discuss partnerships between Taiwan and Southeast Asia and her work with Outright International's global LGBTQI plus inclusive democracy and empowerment initiative. And Ying Chao Kao from Virginia Commonwealth University will present his research regarding the flow of anti-LGBTQ plus movements between the United States. So for our run of show, each panelist will do their presentations for about 10 minutes each, and then we'll have the moderator questions. Then I will open up to questions from you, our audience. So for our first panelist, so John Shi-Cheng-Du is the Secretary General of the Taiwan LGBTQ plus Association. He joined Hotline as a volunteer in 2002 and has since been actively involved in the work on LGBTQI plus and PLWHIV rights. He became Taiwan's Director of Policy Advocacy in 2011 and the Secretary General in 2021. His work includes social education, workplace equality, gay men's sexual health, and international affairs. He was a crucial member of the Marriage Equality Coalition Taiwan and a board member of the Persons with HIV/AIDS Rights Advocacy Association of Taiwan. He is currently the East representative of the ILGA Asia Executive Board, a member of the Gender Equality Committee of the Executive Yuan, a member of the Taipei City Committee of Gender Equality, and a board member of the Taiwan Equality Campaign. He has a master's degree in sociology from National Taiwan University. I think I've talked enough, so we'll hand over to our main speaker, John.
Okay, so yeah, hi everyone. I just came here last night, so I still have some jet lag. Hopefully you all understand about what I'm talking, but if not, please just ask me questions. Okay, so my name is Shamdu, and I'm from the Taiwan Tongzhi Online Association. Tongzhi means LGBTQ in Mandarin. We are the first national LGBTQ organization in Taiwan since 1998, and still surviving. And yeah, so today I will share with you about like the LGBT movement in Taiwan now and the strategies we use, and also the ongoing issues that now we are facing. Okay, so yeah, as I mentioned that Tongzhi Online was founded in 1998, Taiwan, and we started to provide telephone consultation at first. Because life was not easy for LGBT in the 1990s in Taiwan. And later, we just found out that there are many issues need to be dealt with within the LGBT groups and communities. So we just expand our work into different areas. We still can provide community services to LGBT and their family members. And we also provide different like support group to different LGBT, especially for parents who have LGBT children. And we also provide social education to in schools and also to professionals, because Taiwan we have gender equity education, which has been implemented since 2004. So that also gives us a chance to go to school to share about like real life stories and the concept of LGBT to teachers and students. And I believe that is also a very important reason that why Taiwan became the first country to legalize same-sex marriage in 2019 in Asia. And we also provide trainings to like professionals, like healthcare providers, social workers, and recently it's like civil servants. Yeah. And we're also working with like corporates to provide trainings to businesses and to make like more workplace more LGBT inclusive. Yeah, and we do policy advocacy with together with other human rights and LGBT groups. Yeah, and also we do like international collaboration and connections to like LGBT groups, activists, and researchers, especially in Asia. So this is the photo of our staff and volunteers. Now we have 13 staff, 10 are in our headquarters in Taipei, and 3 are in our southern office in Kaohsiung. And we are the biggest LGBT organizations in Taiwan. So you can see that actually LGBT groups in Taiwan are like small size. Yeah, so like we work very closely with each other so that we can make our voices louder. And we also have like more than 400 volunteers, so we work very closely with our volunteers to provide services and also like do advocacy work. So I'm gonna share because I only have like 10 minutes, so I cannot share with you about the history of Taiwan LGBT movement. But if I have time, I can share with you later. But just want to share with you like some strategies we use till now. So the first thing is that to increase public understanding. So yeah, okay. Yeah, so as I mentioned that because we can go to school to provide education, LGBT education to students, and it's very important that we share real stories to the audience, because it can make them to understand about the real situation of LGBT and to let them be more empathy, to show more empathy to to LGBT communities. Yeah, and we also share the stories of LGBT through like social media posts, podcasts, and YouTube videos. And of course, we hold like rallies to show to the society that there are LGBT people and also their supporters together. Like the picture there is about our Taiwan LGBT Pride. So the Pride was started in 2003 with only like less than 2,000, but now this year we got like 180,000 people. It's one of the biggest rallies in Asia. And we also hold the first one transgender march since 2019, which is shown here. And this year we gather about like 2,500 people together. And we also trying to find more allies and working with allies. So like we provide trainings to professionals, as I mentioned. We also hold like gatherings like with HR and ERG members in the corporates, like the picture there. And also we participate in different social movements like disability movements, which is shown in the picture, and also like with like migrant workers, sex workers, and also like labor workers. Yeah. And also we connect with LGBT groups and activists in Asia, like this picture. So we share about our experiences gaining in the same-sex marriage movement, and also about the gender equity education to like activists and groups in Asia. And the next is like doing advocacy. So we do like provide trainings to civil servants. And also because Taiwan since 2011, we have joined coordinating meetings with governments to share about like to discuss about like policies related to LGBT. And since then, we have more and more chances to communicate with our governments. And Taiwan, because our government have gender mainstreaming policies, which they use like gender statistics to discuss about like inequality of gender issues that also include about LGBT, and also like in different levels of central government and local governments, we have gender equality committees. Yeah, so and LGBT activists are also being invited to these committees, so we can share about our inputs about like a policy that is related to LGBT. And also like we also have groups that connect with like civil representatives like legislators and also city councilors to hold like regular gatherings, and so that we can share with the ideas with the civil representatives, like the pictures shown in the middle. And we also use like research to share with like the civil representative, the government, and also the general public about the real situation of LGBT. So like we do about like the living condition report of transgender people, of like LGBT students, of like the LGBT employees, and also like the LGBT policies, white paper. Yeah. So, and then that's is that we also work with government so that they can produce like more guidelines for providing like LGBT inclusive, also like transgender inclusive services, and also like trying to build more like LGBT friendly dental marks, and also like to have like more LGBT inclusive policies. Yeah. And there's still many issues that need to be dealt with now in Taiwan. So as I mentioned that although we have same-sex marriage since 2019, but it's not full marriage equality. So there are still some rights missing that we fight for afterwards to get like the right to do co-adoption. And also some missing rights is that like the trans marriage between Taiwanese and Chinese is still this year, just last month. So we have now Taiwanese and Chinese can get same-sex marriage only if they already have a valid marriage in a third country. Yeah. So that is a very small door, but it's still a door. And you know that is because of the like intense politics between the two countries. Yeah, and also we're still missing the rights of reproductive technology, the right to use the reproductive technology like IVF, and surrogacy is still not legal in Taiwan. So for lesbian couples, if they want to have children, they still need to go abroad, like the US, and cost a lot of money to do IVF. Yeah, and the second one is about comprehensive anti-discrimination law. So although we do have like anti-discrimination articles in different like areas, like the workplace, like the schools, but we don't have a comprehensive anti-discrimination law. So there are some areas that can be not regulated. For example, like housing. So still now, we still hear about like some landlords say that they don't want to rent house to LGBT, and that is legal. Yeah, and also like commercial behavior cannot be regulated. Also, although our government now they try to have their draft of the anti-discrimination law, but still it's being opposed by especially from the anti-LGBT groups, of course, and most of them have religious background. Before, most of them are like fundamentalists, like Christian and Catholic, but now there are also some Buddhists joining. Yeah, because as I know that there's still some gender equality within the Buddhism. Yeah, and also, there's no like discriminatory and or like hate speech. The concept of this ideas in the draft, and our draft also want to like religious exemption clauses, which give religious groups like the religious freedom, which we think that will also harm about like the equality of LGBT. Yeah, and for transgender issues that although Taiwan, we can, for transgender people, they can change their gender markers, but they need to fulfill like two requirements. First, they need to see two psychiatrists, can get diagnosis, and then they need to do the surgery. For male to female, they need to get remove their penis and their testicles. For female to male, they need to remove their ovary, their uterus, and also their breast. And it's not covered by our national health insurance, so they need to pay by themselves. So it's really difficult. And also not all transgender people want to do the surgery, and not all transgender people have the health condition to do the surgery. So that means that most of the transgender in Taiwan, their appearance, they didn't change their gender markers in their documents, and their appearance didn't fit their legal document. But we highly rely on our legal documents, our ID card, our national health insurance cards. So that will make their life more difficult. And we also see in our surveys that now, like many transgender people are still suffering from like the gender binary systems and institutions in daily life, in the workplace, and in the healthcare settings. And this is the last one. And also, we want to make our existing systems more LGBTI friendly, because as I mentioned that although we have a gender equity education and it's being implemented for more than two decades since 2004, but in our survey, we still found out that LGBT students live in a very bipolar life. Some students, their school provide gender equity education with positive LGBT contents, and they meet like good teachers and students, and they live a good life in schools. But some students they are still being hissed or gets like verbally or physically harassed, even like social excluded in schools. That is not right because this system should be adjusted to let all LGBT students to feel safe and like inclusive. And also like for the workplace, so far, unfortunately, like in our survey, only less than half of the LGBT employees have come out to their colleagues and supervisors. And no, if it's come out to their supervisors, the percentage decreased to less than 30% because they are still worrying it will affect their promotion, their relationship with their colleagues and their supervisors, or they will be targeted. And only a small amount of the companies, mostly transnational corporates, Taiwan branch, have like some gender friendly initiatives in the companies in the workplace. And Taiwan, we have many medium and small size businesses, and like LGBT or like DEI is not a priority. Yeah, so we're still trying to make this more welcome. And the last one is like long-term care because Taiwan, we are one of the fast aging society with like very low birth rates. And so long-term care actually is one very important issue that's now we are caring about. So now we work with like more and more like long-term care providers and also like institutes to provide trainings and to make a more LGBT friendly because we are also worried that when more and more LGBT like elderlies receive this long-term care services, if like the providers don't have the knowledge or like don't understand about LGBT more, like if they find out that's like someone like some transgender women actually they didn't remove their genital part, they want to clean their bodies, so it will have some issues, right? So this is also something that we're still working on. Yeah. So I think I'll just stop here and I welcome more questions later. Thank you.
Thank you for setting such a good scene for us about Taiwan's current LGBTQ communities and all the things that they're struggling with currently. I think, so next we're going to go to Yong-In Lee. So Yong-In Lee is an associate professor of political science at California State University at Sacramento, where she teaches gender politics and East Asian politics. Her research primarily focuses on the effectiveness of gender quotas in elections and gender and presidential elections in South Korea and Taiwan. Her current book project examines the election and impeachment of South Korea's first female president, Park Geun-hye. Her research appeared in electoral studies, politics and gender, feminist media studies, Washington Post, among other outlets. And so Yong-In, please take it away.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Let me share my screen here. Oh, like somehow my face is there. Okay, let me actually. Okay, let me do this again. Okay, so let me start. Yeah, thank you for the invitation, and it's great to see, my friend Sean, I met in Taiwan, and I'm glad to make some new friends today. And I'd like to also note my presentation is based on my field work I did in 2018 and 2018 with financial support from Ministry of Foreign Affairs Taiwan Fellowship. So I'd like to talk about the role of political leaders in the fight for same-sex marriage rights in Taiwan. Initially, I thought about only talking about women leaders, and I thought it is true, a lot of women political leaders played a significant role, but there are some other allies, male allies as well. So I thought it was more appropriate to introduce various critical actors in legalization of Taiwan's same-sex marriage. Let's see, can I move? Okay, so briefly, as a South Korean citizen, Taiwan is admired by a lot of feminist activists and scholars in East Asia, not only in South Korea, for its high level of women's representation. So currently, Taiwan's legislative wing has 42% of representation, of women's representation, which is more than double compared to South Korea's National Assembly. 20% of National Assembly members are women, and which is even comparatively higher than in Japan, where only 11% of lower House members are women, and Asia average is 21%. So Taiwan is definitely a leader when it comes to the numerical representation of women in politics. And as we all know, Taiwan has 2 female vice presidents, and also President Tsai Ing-wen was re-elected successfully. Some progress in same-sex marriage rights and LGBTQ plus rights in Asia. So as of now, there are 36 countries worldwide which have full marriage equality rights for LGBTQ people. And Taiwan is a leader in Asia. Taiwan was the first in Asia to legalize same-sex marriage in 2019. And Nepal, the Supreme Court overturned the ban on same-sex marriage. So last year, there was a first same-sex marriage registered in 2023. And in Thailand, the marriage equality bill now allows registration starting next year. And in South Korea, there is an ongoing fight for LGBTQ rights. And one of the breakthroughs was this year in July, the Supreme Court recognizes healthcare insurance benefits for same-sex partners. Marriage is not allowed yet, but in October, which was last month, there were 11 couples, same-sex couples, which filed a lawsuit, against 6 local jurisdictions. So we'll see there is some meaningful and positive movements towards expanding LGBTQ plus rights in South Korea as well. So some of the images I took, I think actually on the photo on the left, there is a Sean's face there. So again, Taiwan has a historic, has a milestone in 2019 by legalizing same-sex marriage. And on the right side top, we know in May, right before President Tsai Ing-wen finished her presidential term, Nymphia Wind and her team had a show in the presidential office. And it is also surprising again, especially as a South Korean citizen, mainstream political parties and especially a ruling party, DPP politicians, they are present, they attend the Taiwan Pride. And even KMT, their youth branch, participate in Taiwan Pride and all the other political parties as well. So LGBTQ rights are not only kind of minority issues, I think it has become the issue, very important electoral and the policy issues in the mainstream politics in Taiwan. So what explains Taiwan's success, right? That is very puzzling to many. In South Korea, I also get this question quite a bit. And people often say South Korea's delay in legalizing same-sex marriage is often attributed to conservative religious influence and low public support for LGBTQ rights and marriage equality. But when I look at the public opinion polls, actually Taiwan and South Korea's support for LGBTQ rights and marriage equality is getting, the gap is getting narrower and narrower. So in 1991, only about 11% of Taiwanese people supported same-sex marriage, and it increased to like 54%, according to Academia Sinica's Taiwan Social Change Survey. And I know tongzhi, Hotline, they also had their own public opinion polls showing how Taiwan is getting more and more open to LGBTQ plus rights. In South Korea, in 2001, only 17% people said they supported same-sex marriage, but the percentage has grown to 40% in 2023. And depending on which public opinion polls you look at, the specific numbers are different. But according to Pew Research, 45% support in Taiwan versus 41% support in South Korea in last year. So some indicators show public opinion might not be the biggest constraint in South Korea or in other countries. And even in Taiwan, it is not like 80 or 90% of Taiwanese citizens support same-sex marriage. So public opinion cannot be the primary reason for legalizing or not legalizing same-sex marriage. Another factor is a religious influence, and Sean kind of commented on how these days it's not only Catholics or Christians, but also Buddhists are joining the anti-LGBTQ mobilization. And it is true, like Taiwan has a smaller portion of people who consider themselves as Christians or Catholics compared to South Korea, for example, where 1/5 of South Koreans say they are Christians, Protestants, and 11% Catholic. And this share is pretty significantly higher compared to Taiwan. However, even though they're smaller in number, anti-LGBTQ groups in Taiwan, they received pretty strong support, strategic and organizational and financial support from the US and other international conservative alliances based on the religious organizations. For example, Brian Brown of the International Organization for the Family, whose Twitter X, I guess, image I screenshot on the top. So even though maybe in the general population who are Christians or Catholics are smaller, still they are very, very well organized and very well financed minority. And in the anti-LGBTQ movements, they found alliances and allies in the conservative KMT political party. So again, they found actors who can make or break any type of legalization attempt in the National Assembly. So religion, yes, but it's hard to say religion did not still played a significant role in opposing LGBTQ rights in Taiwan, despite its smaller number. So when I asked my interviewees about what they think led Taiwan's success in legalization of same-sex marriage, people told me a lot of different things, but I can distill their responses into four main things. For one is robust and vibrant civil society. And even though there are other factors I listed here, without this decades-long fight and advocacy by the civil society, marriage equality wouldn't have happened at all. And as Sean also mentioned, LGBTQ movements in Taiwan has a really strong solidarity and alliances with other movements like feminist movement, disability, and migrants, rights, and things of those nature. So civil society is very, very strong. Another is there are critical actors in the government, not only in legislative wing, but also executive wing as well. And gender equity education, which Sean also mentioned, it changes people's perception, become more accepting and open to diversity and inclusion in Taiwan society, especially among younger voters. So a public opinion has changed too. And another thing I will say, both pro and anti-LGBTQ people in Taiwan told me was the role China play actually in legalizing same-sex marriage. Not that they're directly influenced the legislative process, but the fact that because of Taiwan's unique international standing, it also played a role in the government's and then civil society's mind. We are different from China. We are not China, right? The importance of human rights and democracy, they played an important role, but also in a way, the issue of national identity and Taiwan is different from China kind of played a role in promoting LGBTQ rights in Taiwan. So some activists said before legalization, in 2018, they told me, I feel like government is using LGBTQ rights to promote this national image, but they said still, I'd rather be used. It doesn't matter. I want to be used so we can, we can achieve LGBTQ rights. Actually, Sean told me that. I'm kind of paraphrasing here. Just some quickly, President Taiwan played a very important role, even though her support was not considered to be very consistent. There's something I noticed in 2018, that was after the Constitutional Court ruling and before the legalization, right? When I interviewed about 30 activists, overall, the tone was very, very negative because that was a time that things were really stuck. And a lot of activists were very critical of President Taiwan, saying, oh, we need to listen to all the different sides, we need to build a consensus, which a lot of people perceive to be very different from her stance as a candidate, right? Because in 2015, she posted this very famous Facebook video saying, I am Taiwan, I support marriage equality, which excited a lot of voters, especially younger and liberal voters. There was this rainbow transportation card, which I show at the bottom on the right. It sold out, quickly, very, very quickly, right? So there was this excitement that President Taiwan is going to bring and improve, promote LGBTQ rights, but things were taking very slowly. And a lot of activists and people felt very frustrated that she didn't really take a very determined and very proactive stance about LGBTQ issues. However, it was really interesting because when I came back to Taiwan in 2024, the majority opinion was very, very positive about President Taiwan's influence. They said, yeah, because she appointed liberal judges, Supreme Court justices, and then because she appointed, premiers like Premier Su Zheng-Chang, she indirectly kind of shaped the direction of the marriage equality legalization. And which I'm going to say later, because she didn't unilaterally just promote same-sex marriage herself through presidential, some kind of executive action, but because she let all the different branches of the government do their own job, right? Constitutional Court, judiciary branch did their work, and there was a referendum, so the public opinion also kind of played things out. Legislative, they did this, work themselves. So by letting all the different branches and the actors in democracy do their part to move this agenda forward, it actually promoted the legitimacy of same-sex marriage eventually. So even though there were a lot of frustrations during the process, later, now retroactively speaking, a lot of activists thought President Taiwan did a very important role, played a really important role by not really rushing things, but by building this consensus. There were some challenges, legalizing same-sex marriage, of course. I don't have time to go into the details, but there was a 2018 referendum, which did not, which was really bad news for the LGBTQ movement. And within the, legislative win, not only KMT members, but even DPP legislators were very hesitant because they were concerned about the electoral backlash, especially those who represent districts outside of Taipei. And again, President Taiwan was experiencing criticism from both sides, from both opponents and the proponents of LGBTQ rights because of the very slow pace of the issue moving. So Premier Su Zheng-Chang, when I came in 2024 in Taiwan, a lot of people talked about Premier Su's role. He, after the referendum, which blocked LGBTQ groups to have access to marriage, right? By amending the civil law, Premier Su played a really significant role to encourage and also to persuade DPP members to vote for this bill, which will promote, which will allow anybody to have access to marriage. So one of the things a lot of interviews told me was this kind of genius of the naming of this bill, the Act for Implementation of Judiciary Win Interpretation number 748. This is a very, very long name. This is not a usual naming convention of the bill, but by having this very obscure name, there's no marriage in the title of the bill, right? And by having this big, long name, Premier Su, he emphasizes, well, we're doing this, right, because Constitutional Court told us to do this, right? So there is one more kind of passive, so it can kind of mitigate the DPP members' fear about the electoral backlash because of their conservative constituents. And at the same time, it relies on the legitimacy of Constitutional Court. It is very hard to challenge, right? It is really hard to politicize when something is unconstitutional, right? It gives a lot of legitimacy to the issue. So some of the interviewees said this naming and the really arduous, efforts by Premier Su to convince DPP members, that was really critical to make the legalization of same-sex marriage. There are some other key members. Some people told me about Chen, who is actually a very well-known Catholic, and him being very open about and openly supporting LGBTQ rights. That played a really important role. And legislator Yu Mei, I had an honor to interview. She was a tireless advocate for the LGBTQ rights. And then currently, Vice President Pi Kim Xiao, she was a legislator who was the first one in 2006 in Taiwan to propose bill related to same-sex marriage. And then only pro-LGBTQ legislator Jason Su as well. So there are several members, key allies in the legislative wing and also executive wing, which continued and which collaborated with the civil society to make this legalization happen. Because we have don't have time, I will stop here. There's one thing, Sean mentioned there is this transnational alliance and partnership happening in Asia. There's this legalization of same-sex marriage in Taiwan has impact beyond Taiwan. So currently, the October 2024 legal lawsuit, 11 same-sex couples filing lawsuit against 6 local courts. One of the plaintiffs, they cited the progress in Taiwan, saying changes are occurring in Asia where same-sex marriage is gaining legal recognition, and he mentioned Taiwan as an example. So I'd like to emphasize, again, the movement and the progress towards LGBTQ rights was not very smooth. It was not linear, but this milestone in Taiwan has a ripple effect beyond Taiwan. So I'm going to stop here. Thank you.
It's great to see how Taiwan is able to influence South Korea, and hopefully, South Korea will also be able to legalize same-sex marriage. And I think you also brought up a lot of great points about the similarities and differences between the demographics between Taiwan and South Korea, as well as the tie between LGBTQ communities and national identity, which has been quite interesting to see in Taiwan. So we'll now go to Whitney. So Whitney Piper serves as the program manager for the Global LGBTQ plus Inclusive Democracy and Empowerment Initiative. Before joining Outright, Whitney spent 4 years at the National Democratic Institute on the Citizen Participation and Inclusive team, guiding NDI's work with persons with disabilities, ethnic and religious minorities, Indigenous peoples, and LGBTQI plus communities. This included shaping NDI's global inclusion strategies, conducting training for staff, and leading NDI's learning on best practices, challenges, and innovations in regards to enhancing the political participation of communities experiencing marginalization. Prior to NDI, Whitney worked on ethnic minority rights and education advocacy in Thailand and Myanmar, and helped landmine survivors, persons with disabilities, form self-help groups to strengthen their networks and advocate for their rights. So Whitney, please, your presentation.
Thank you, Adrienne, and good evening, everyone from Cape Town, South Africa. I'm sorry I can't be there with you in person today, but there's a lot of activity going on here in South Africa the next 2 weeks on LGBTQI+ issues. So as Adrian mentioned, I work for Outright International. Outright is a global LGBTQI plus organization that focuses on ensuring human rights for LGBTIQ people everywhere. We do this through advocacy through the United Nations and serving as Secretariat of the UN LGBTI core group. We do this through support, where we are investing in partnerships with LGBTIQ communities and allies to tackle some of the greatest challenges that communities are facing around the world. And we also do this through research, identifying research gaps and filling those, such relevant topics as conversion therapy, legal gender recognition, and legal registration for LGBTIQ civil society. And as mentioned, I manage the Global LGBTQI plus Inclusive Democracy and Empowerment Initiative, also known as GLIDE. GLIDE is a U.S. State Department funded program that's to try and bring LGBTQI plus communities to the democracy space and utilize democratic practices and political processes as a way to advance LGBTQI plus rights. And when we were beginning this project about a year ago, we were thinking through countries that we really wanted to elevate to show this parallel line between the democratization process and the advancement of LGBTQI plus rights. And Taiwan came to the forefront because there's a very clear case study of the fact that we have seen as LGBTQI plus rights grow and become protected and institutionalized, as so does the democracy standards and norms and practices in Taiwan. And this really does reinforce a lot of the data that shows this strong correlation between the protection and promotions of LGBTIQ rights and political and democratic processes. As mentioned by others on the panel, Taiwan has had a very strong influence in the region, seen as a leader both in their advancements of LGBTIQ rights, but also in defining what democracy looks like, I think, in an Asian region context. Democracy and LGBTIQ rights are often seen as Western concepts, or that argument is often utilized by anti-democracy, anti-gender actors. And what we're seeing in Taiwan is that obviously is not the case, and that it is being very much defined within the context and the experiences of the Taiwan movement. So what we're seeing at the regional level is Taiwan obviously being a leader and demonstrating how to do this work and how to do it well. Others on the panel mentioned South Korea and Thailand as examples where you're finally seeing movement on marriage equality as well as other rights around LGBTQI plus communities. And I do think that it is Taiwan's presence and ability to kind of demonstrate best practices that has been able to lead to the successes that we're seeing in the region. I think we can point to also Nepal as another space where you are seeing actors learn from and gain skills from the Taiwan LGBTQI plus movement to move their initiatives forward. Especially because I think it's taking a kind of a similar approach around there was a legal challenge that then is hopefully in Nepal going to be leading eventually to some type of legislation. I think what also makes Taiwan unique is that it shows that how to do this work in a very complex space that is being influenced by complex actors. So in the case of Thailand, you have a very complex space because they've been under basically a military junta control since 2013. You're also dealing with a monarchy. And LGBTQI plus rights have been kind of a niche topic where it's often being kind of being forced to the side as something that's not a priority because there are other issues in Thailand that need to be fixed. And I think through engagement and learning with Taiwan actors, we're seeing members of the Thailand movement realize how to kind of make arguments for these issues and couch them within issues that are taking place in Thailand and not being seen as separate from the issues that you're seeing in Thailand. It was also pointed out that Taiwan has done a very good job around solidarity with other movements. And this is actually where other LGBTQ plus movements really, really struggle. Sometimes that has to do with the fact that there's not a lot of outreach taking place with other movements. And then in some cases, there's proactive kind of siloing between the movements because of other narratives being kind of shared by the anti-gender actors, particularly when it comes to the feminist and women's rights movements. So Taiwan has really demonstrated how to do this well and why solidarity across movements is so necessary in not only advancing your own movement's rights, but then fortifying the rights of other communities that have ripple effects on the issues that you're trying to move forward. I also think Taiwan has done a really good job at creating safe spaces for others to come and learn. So we know, for example, that that there are activists coming from places like Hong Kong to Taiwan Pride, and not only having a great time and celebrating queer joy, but also I think having a space where they can have conversations and they can strategize and they can see what this can potentially look like in their context and potentially how to move some of these initiatives forward, given the presence of China. So Taiwan has created some of those safe spaces for people to come to learn and to really begin to build strategies in a space where they may not be able to do that in their home countries. The last thing that I'll talk about is the fact that what we're seeing in places like South Korea and Japan is that the movements are actually are a little bit more on the nascent side, and that's because they've lacked a lot of funding. So because of their economic status, South Korea and Japan often can't receive US government funding or a lot of foreign assistance in general, because a lot of money is tagged for countries that are of lower economic status. And this has really left the South Korean and the Japanese movements at a little bit of a, I would say, as at a disadvantage. And because Taiwan has done such a good job at being able to couch LGBTQI plus issues into broader democracy and kind of geopolitical issues in the region, they've been able to get a little bit more attention and a little bit more kind of international support. And so what we were able to do under GLIDE is in partnership with the Taiwan Equality Campaign, Taiwan Equality Center, we supported them to be able to travel to South Korea and to Japan to start to build solidarity and to provide strategy conversations with movements in those areas. Because they can't often receive funding, this is a way for us to kind of help them to share the wealth, so to speak, and help them learn from the Taiwanese activists about how they've been able to move things forward. What we're also seeing is that there's a really strong commitment in Taiwan to try and look at domestic fundraising as a form of sustainability, and the fact that Taiwan is also kind of entering that point where economic status-wise funding may be a little bit more tricky to get because from international actors. And I think that that's another strategy that they've shared in their South Korea and Japan trips is how to do this and get your communities involved, get your country members involved, and not only involved in showing up to your marches, to your pride parades, but to also be showing up financially and contributing in a way that helps sustain and build the movements in the country. The last the way I'll wrap up is, again, I think that what has been really the most exciting part about Taiwan and the fact that it has done so well is, again, how it's been able to really define what LGBTQI plus rights and democracy look like within their own context. It's very unique to Taiwan. It's functioning pretty well overall. And I think it is a really good way to look at how this work can be done and can be counter to this notion that all of these things are being Western and imposed on these communities. The movements have done a really fantastic job at taking the notions and the pillars of democracy and LGBTQI plus rights and equality and really making it their own and utilizing democracy and democratic participation as a tool to really advance their rights. And I suspect that Taiwan will continue to be seen as a leader, not only in the Asia region, but around the world. We're often referring to Taiwan in a lot of ways across all of our work at Outright, but particularly at this intersection of democracy and LGBTQI plus rights. And I think it's really, really important that Taiwan continue to do this work and that they continue to see the support that they're seeing, because in a lot of ways they are kind of this wall against authoritarianism that is kind of surrounding the island, if you think about it, whether it's from China or it's from places like Indonesia, Malaysia, where you're seeing the authoritarian tendencies really taking a foothold. We need places like Taiwan to not only continue to stand the ground on democracy, but for the sake of for the regional movement, for the LGBTQ plus movement as well.
Thank you so much, Whitney, for all of your great points. I really like points that you brought up about Taiwanese activists doing a good job of addressing legal challenges, of their solidarity, looking at integrated issues, and domestic funding. And I think the work that you're doing is so important in connecting all these different communities together. So that's really important, really great to hear about that. Okay, now we're going to turn to our last speaker, Ying-Chun Kao. So Ying-Chun Kao is an assistant professor of sociology at Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, Virginia. His research interests include sexualities, masculinities, world religions, and global LGBTQ politics and justice. His current book project titled Liquid Conservatism, Queering Transnational Anti-LGBTQ Movements Between Taiwan and the United States, examines the rise and fall of the culture wars against marriage equality and the LGBTQ inclusive education in Taiwan, unpacking its transnational connections with American, European, African, and inter-Asian counterparts. The book is under contract with the NYU Press and is scheduled to be published in the fall of 2025 or spring of 2026. So we all need to remember to grab a copy. Kao's scholarship has been published in journals Sexualities, International Journal of Taiwan Studies, and Contexts in English, along with Gender Equity Education Quarterly and Taiwanese Chinese. And his entry about Taiwanese LGBTQ movements is forthcoming in Brill's Encyclopedia of Taiwan Studies. Recently, Kao accepted the invitation to serve as the deputy editor for the newly founded journal Sex and Sexualities, which is officially affiliated with the American Sociological Association section of Sociology of Sexualities. He also received his PhD in sociology from Rutgers University in Brunswick in 2018. Thank you, Dr. Katz.
You might question. Well, thanks so much, Andrea and GTI for inviting me to join this wonderful panel. And actually, I learned greatly from my story panelists, and I think we are talking about the different facades of the diamond that is Taiwan LGBT movements, and we try to use different perspectives and different aspects to share this complex but beautiful and interesting story with you. Today, that's very difficult to talk only one day after the American election. So I reorganized and scrambled the slides accordingly because I want us to think beyond the box about the the short-term snapshot about one election and to think more broadly. So I want to invite us to think in three dimensions, including time, space, and progress. So I want to think to lead us to think more deeply and more fluidly about the present, the past, and the future. And also want to take a jet to fly around the world to think about how can we use the globalization and transnationalism to reimagine from the global perspective, what do we mean by anti-LGBTQ conservatism, for LGBTQ liberalism and the queer radicalism, the three major forces working together, and what are the steps that we can make together to move forward. So let me start with the time. I want to echo Professor Lee's emphasis on the function, but also the misfunction about the public opinion. Taiwan is a case is special in the way, like if you look into one of the longest, the national and international survey, which is the work value survey in the past 7 waves, from the early 1980s, to the recent waves. Actually, Taiwan is not the progress or advanced Asian country that had the highest support rate to homosexuality. Actually, Taiwan was doing good, but only like toward the positive, but in the moderate one, right? And Taiwan is followed and after Japan and Hong Kong, actually. So actually that poses us an intellectual puzzle. Why the public opinion to support homosexuality did not fully reflect upon the fundamental institutional changes that Taiwan is experiencing. So actually, I want to use this slide to emphasize 2 implications for you. One is, think about the positive trend that has been opening in most of the advanced Asian countries in the past 4 decades. Actually, regardless which party of the American president has been sitting in the White House, the trend about gender and sexual liberation has been steadily moving toward a more liberal and more progressive end. Of course, as Obama said, the history would develop in the zigzag way sometimes, and sometimes we make 3 steps forward, 2 steps backward, or sometimes even had a backlash. Right, but in general, actually, gender and sexuality, as a professor who has been teaching sociology of gender, sexuality, and masculinities in BCU, actually compared with other issues like class and race as an entity, the changes toward the progressive end about gender and sexuality has been happening more fast and more quickly than think about the changes of racial inequality in the US. Right, so that's one implication. I hope that can bring some people hope, based on this slide. But on the other hand, Taiwan is also special in the way like Taiwan is, a special country that although the public support has been fluctuated based on the political water temperature there and also around the world, Taiwan became the first Asian country to legalize its marriage for several reasons. I also partially echo with Professor Lee's sharing. One, Taiwan has been witnessing a very vibrant civil society that has been, had bars, even indigenous nations organized their own pro LGBTQ movement and follow the lead of the feminist books. And Xiao Meiqing, the current president, were also the first legislator who initiated the Same-Sex Marriage Act back in the 2006. And Taiwan was also the country that hosts the Organization for the Intersexuality International Choice. So Taiwan's pro-LGBT movement is wide-ranged. Taiwan has been also witnessing a very vibrant cultural creative and in all kind of genres, including the fiction, the movies, the novels, and Taiwan is also hosting one international the online streaming platform for LGBTQ content, material, film, documentary, etc. And Taiwan's music video has been widely shared, including Ame or Jolin Tsai's music video. So actually, the changes reflected upon the institutional changes or the policies that we are witnessing has been supported by the very robust and civil society and also the pop culture in general. Of course, when we hear many times in the international relationship or the think tank venues that Taiwan tried to self-distinct itself from China became one of the factors why Taiwan became the first Asian country to legalize its marriage. But I will also argue that that factor may or may not be the sufficient one. It could be the necessary one, but not be the sufficient one. Because the sufficient one should be, the very active and hardworking LGBTQ activists like Shang Du and many of our comrades, in Taiwan in the past 4 decades that self-exploited themselves, working at the very low end of the income, but even working during the weekends and devoted their own life, to to contribute to this change of the LGBTQ rights that make the turning the page possible. But at the same time, the policy changes in Taiwan need to be addressed. It is not just about same-sex marriage, although it became one of the benchmarks that people always talk about. But in Taiwan, the inclusivity of the gender equity education or the gender identity and the sexual orientation has been widely seen a wide range of the spectrum in terms of policies, including the area of culture, health, family and marriage, data security, and the court participation, employment, workplace, and education. And the activists will tell you, actually, the implementation of Gender Equity Education Act that has been placed 2 decades ago, 2004. That provides the mandatory national LGBTQ inclusive education to children's textbook and the curricula from the grade 5 to the grade 12 and even spread to the university level were one of the most fundamental factors that help us to see the sea change in terms of the support in the younger generation. When we consider the return of the more conservative politics, back to the White House or even around some European nations, I also want to share another positive note with people. When we hear about the right-wing discourses, for example, religious freedom that has been used in a more conservative, morally way in the US to secure the Christian supremacism. But I want to remind people, if you think from the Taiwan's shoes, that means very differently. As Professor Lee shows, actually Christianity in Taiwan is a religious minority. So actually the emphasis on the religious freedom and diversity opened the door for all kinds of religious or the spiritual possibilities. So, for example, you can see in the figure, the Buddhist same-sex marriage was held around 2012, and also Taiwan had a history and the tradition that even had a god that was designated to LGBTQ people. So actually, when we think forward, I also want to argue that Taiwan has another backward thinking in the positive way, like people are reinventing and re-exploring. What does that mean by the traditions in the plural way? There are many progressive or inclusive diversity, heritage, and the memories has been hidden behind at the past. So, for example, more and more historical analysis in Taiwan has been exploring what are the histories of the homoeroticism or the welcoming of all kinds of gender and sexual diversities that has been forgotten by the Western modernity, Christian supremacism, and the layers of colonization or decolonization. Okay, I cannot address too much about the proliferation of the gender and sexual identities in the US, but also the same thing has been heavily spread around the world. Okay, so that's the positive note about we didn't think more fluidly about the time. I also want to quickly address about the space. When we talk about Taiwan, which is the global leader, as Whitney said, but actually we are witnessing the global rise of the anti-LGBT movement and the right-wing politics for sure. And that's happening in all kinds of continents. If we look at Taiwan as the case study about the anti-LGBT conservatism, we are seeing actually they has become not only the backlash in the first stage when Taiwan is pursuing for the pro-LGBT movement and the same-sex marriage campaign for sure. Nowadays, they became more and more proactive to have the preemptive action to do some conservative legislation or the restriction even before the pro-LGBT movement make any progress in their policies. Let me give you one quick example. This is the translation of the Chinese letter. Actually, that's a translation from the American conservative letter that taught students and the parents that there are many fake news, including like the gay adolescents can be cured into normal if they did not have the chance to join any queer straight alliance, or they even teach the children that being gay or homosexual is bad to the youth, the mental, physical health. Although this information has been clarified in months in the US context, but actually the American or European conservatives has been translating this kind of distorted information to spread that around the world. They are creating some fake scientific foundation and to use the translation to circulate information from North America to East Asia. And based on my research, that misinformation has been circulated in Asia and even circulated back to influence the Chinese speaking communities within the US. So my research show you actually are different directions about the flow of anti-LGBTQ conservatism in terms of discourses, ideology, the playbook, and institution. For the time's sake, I need to quickly skip this part. So as like focus on family, Brian Brown for sure, seven mountain theory that the Christian dominianism try to conquer seven from A to G. A, art and the creation. B, business. C, church, religion. D, distribution and media. E, education. F, family. And G, government and politics. So they think that's a good strategy to conquer the seven mountain. Seven is the magic number for Christians. If they imagine in the theory, if they can conquer seven different mountains, Christian can become the king of each secular countries, and the king of the kings, the God in their own imagination, could conquer and become the king of the whole secular world. So I need to quickly skip this part because actually the circulation about the anti-LGBTQ movement has been widely shared within the US and within the Asia and also around the world. So I talk about the filtered Western imperialism in terms of the European and American conservatism has been influencing Taiwan, and Taiwan's or Asian created or hybridized conservatism has been sharing within the region. And sometimes we also see some inter-South or South-South conversation within the anti-LGBTQ conservatism. For example, some African evangelical religious leaders were invited to give the speech and the preach in Taiwan to justify that the poor LGBT movement was the Western thing, and the Southern thing, they used that kind of separatism or that kind of xenophobic discourses to say the conservative family value should be the Asian or the African things, and that kind of progressive ideology was outside or the Western dump to our long lens. So finally, I want to echo with Secretary General Sean Du's emphasis. Now, Taiwan is not perfect. It's not a paradise. Taiwan is still facing the next step, not only to include all kinds of anti-discrimination acts into the next step and the religious backlash or the exemption for the religious leader organizations away from the punish of the Anti-Discrimination Act become one of the loophole could be happening in the next step. And also the debate between so-called the feminist or pro-women movement versus the transgender right will be another lingering issue that people need to have more dialogue or communication with one another. And some conservatives even use the Marxian analysis to say they did not support lesbian and gay people to use the surrogacy mothers or the artificially assisted technology because they think it's the way to exploit the woman's body who suffer from a low SES, socioeconomic income, or the poverty. So they think they banned or opposition to surrogate mother or the AAT usage actually is for the justice. So I think the next step, more communication, more sharing with open-mindedness will be one of the way people can move forward together without the backlash or even further chasms within our society. So I hope you enjoy the slides of pie that my book is going to offer, and I welcome all kind of questions in the Q&A section. Thank you so much.
So much, Chuck, for bringing a little bit of optimism to our panel and talking about some of the greater themes. That's really good to hear about this. Because we're a little bit tight on time, I think I'm going to forego my own moderator questions. So if there are some questions from the audience. Sorry.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your presentations. My question is actually about the ties between and national identity in Taiwan. And how important it is to have Taiwan's name put on all this process. I think it was in 2022 when World Pride was supposed to be held in Kaohsiung. But I think they broke the contract because they wanted to remove the name Taiwan from the event. So how important do you think it is that Taiwan's name is being put on the movement? And do you think this is a sufficient use of Taiwan's diplomatic space to use the movement as part of this?
Great question, but I'll just repeat it in case our people online can't hear it. So basically, Zoe was asking about the importance of connecting the name of Taiwan to LGBTQ. She was mentioning also that in Russia, that Pride not happening there because they decided to take away the name of Taiwan. So is it important to keep these connected together? How can it work?
Well, that's an interesting question. I have a very quick response. As the scholar who studies sexuality and gender, of course, that would be helpful to use Taiwan and along with other global southern cases to think about the possibility of LGBT justice or politics can be related to any names beyond West Europe and the US. And Taiwan help us to think beyond the American situations. But as you said, when using the Taiwan's name, the geopolitical concerns will always chip in, right? So, that kind of ban to use Taiwan's name in the World Pride or Global Pride is definitely a concerning issue for the people who want to use Taiwan's name. And I think for the American audience, that'll be easier to have the analogy here. In the US, when we think about the Black Lives Matters, then one of the branch will be say her name, right? So which is to give the names and to recognize the contributions of all the minority people. And that's helpful to think about Taiwan, not only as a state or a country that's being marginalized away from the United Nations system, but also we can imagine Taiwan as a minority in the international society that has become a queer or feminist, a woman, a gender or sexual minority, whose name can be said out loud and in public.
Remember, there was a time around before 2014, Taiwan would be named like a ghost island within Taiwanese young yeah, because at the time we think that the politics is very conservative and also not LGBT friendly. Yeah, but I think with the rise of sunflower movement in 2014 and afterwards the politics changes. So I think now this strong trend that we connect the Taiwanese identity with LGBT movement for sure. And it's also it's a way to show to the world that even that country that we already legalized the second marriage compared to China. Yeah. And although I think that's because Taiwan we value democracy very much. So I think LGBT movement is also a great way to show that this social issues can be discussed and the rights, human rights can be achieved within the democratic tools. Yeah, so that what I'm thinking that's why now, you can see that especially for younger generation, the support of Taiwanese identity and also LGBT rights also are very high.
So forgot to mention for our online audience, please feel free to send your questions in the YouTube chat, tweet us, also email us. Whitney Youngin, would you like to add to? Would you like to add something?
Yeah, if I may, I think the issue of national identity and connecting that to LGBTQ rights in Taiwan, I noticed my interpretation is the government is aware of the both international audience and also the domestic audience. So the last slide, because I took so much time during my presentation that I couldn't share, was this kind of criticism actually I got in Taiwan about maybe the government is pink washing, using the marriage equality to promote its national image for the international audience and making it look like, despite all the remaining issues in LGBT communities, making kind of an illusion that LGBT rights has been fully addressed. So, when I go to, the first one, Taipei, the art museum, there are a lot of goods like merch related to LGBTQ rights. There is this tour guidebook published by Department of Information and Tourism about where to go for, LGBTQ friendly places and bookstores and bars and stuff. Department of Gender Equality, which is part of Executive Win, they have this flyer showing gender equality in Taiwan, and being very proud of Taiwan being the first in Asia to legalize same-sex marriage. About domestic audience, when I attended some of the campaign rallies, the political parties rallies before the presidential election in Taiwan, I was so struck by all the narratives about LGBTQ rights. So it was very clear that DPP was deriving its legitimacy and support from the people, mainly from, a lot of times, from LGBTQ rights. We are the party which legalized same-sex marriage, right? I expected they were going to talk about Kaohsiung incidents, democratization movement in the 1980s. They barely talked about it. The party was really fully promoting its credentials in LGBTQ rights. And when I interviewed younger people in Taiwan, they were so proud of Taiwan being the first in Asia to legalize same-sex marriage. So I think this national identity is not only for the international community, but the government is also very mindful of the domestic audience about its legitimacy as Taiwan. We are different from China.
I think those are all really great points. Does anybody else have any questions? Yes, please.
Legislative assistant, South Korea, I did hear all her presentation. Hard. Been working for Seoul prices months right before COVID hit. Into the national identity and all this stuff. But there are a lot of similarities and differences. But what I see is that they're recognizing this LGBTQ as a significant force, a political force that may increase the support rate for the government or not, or even as like a appeal to even to international community. So I think it's important to think there are a lot of supporting LGBTQ rights that really care about it and willing to test the vote, their opinion on this, right? But I think that does not really show up in South Korean politics. It's like our rate is getting larger and larger every year. This time, like, people does not translate into politics. That does not translate into votes. When people cast a vote, like we see a lot like increased representation in media of like gay things coming out, or transhuman coming out, but it does not translate into people voting for their rights. It's like, oh yeah, I do recognize gay people. Oh, I know that there are LGBTQ people living in Korea. Yeah, like I don't have any, against it, but I'm willing to, am I willing to test the vote or would it increase voting world? So I think that's like the biggest difference. And also like, even though like our support rate towards legalizing same-sex marriage, it's going up every year. The reason why like government and all the politicians, regardless whether they're conservative or not, like liberal parties or not, saying that have yet reached the social consensus is because they don't recognize it as a significant political force. So they don't see it as like something that will change their, it's not a significant force. So I'm curious now, like, have you seen like how, I'm also curious like how Taiwan actually became a country who recognized it first, and how like as an activist actually makes a decision related to it. Just curious to learn what you think of it, and also like curious what professor thinks of it about it. Yeah. So.
Thank you so much. Actually, I was able to go to Pride and so before, and I had a great time. So thank you so much for your help in organizing that. So just to repeat the question again, just in case you weren't able to hear that online. So basically, she was talking about how there is more support for LGBTQ rights in Korea. For example, increases in Pride attendance, more support like culturally and socially, but this is not translating into a recognized voter base of South Korean officials. So how can we make that jump from something that is becoming more culturally supported into something that is actually supported in legislation, in policy, and by the government?
Yeah, I do have some quick response and to incorporate your own kind comment and also other comments shared by the panelists. First of all, although some people may have the perception or impression that sometimes the LGBTQ issue can become a partisan issue toward one party versus the other. But I think one of the golden formula that Taiwan's LGBT movement is using is to insist and frame and teach its own crowd that the LGBT rights should be a bipartisan, transpartisan, or non-partisan issue. It's about the human rights, it's about the justice, it's about all the benefits and the well-being for all citizens. And that is also a self-branding or self-identification of all people in one nation, regardless it's Taiwan, South Korea, or around the world. And although you will see different proportions of support across the borders of different partisans, but that's a very important issue, not to allow the LGBT issue becomes the hostage of only one party. And the other thing I think is very important is to mobilize, the supporters of the Pride or other great protests in the way to teach them, your vote matters. Right, and that means a lot. So the supporters can use different strategies that's been contextualized, localized in different society. In Taiwan, it could be, even like 10, 20, 50 people can organize a kind of living room gathering to welcome the local speakers or the representatives to that small gathering to become one of the small constituency. And as large as to use the Pride to welcome the politicians or candidates to the on stage. So there's a whole levels of different hierarchy or strategies that people can use. But these need to be discussed in the very local context, to create your own tools of or social movement study will say the repertoires or the tools strategies to make that happen. Well, there's always pros and cons about the politicization of the LGBTQ supporters, but I think all the activists can play well at the front line. And also, I want to quickly address two issues about all the comments that's been shared. To Dr. Lee's this discussion about authoritarianism and colonialism in Taiwan, I need to emphasize that actually the power of Christianity, actually the religious conservatism, should not be limitedly considered only about their own actors. For example, we know that the Christianity in Korea was one of the legacy of the post-World War, right? Because the U.S. aids are using the Christian churches as a channel to give all the resources to South Korea after the World War II. So that's why it creates a large Christian population, although the population is in decline. But in Taiwan, the Christianity sounds like small, but they are powerful in terms of the legacy of authoritarianism. Don't forget Chiang Kai-shek and Jiang Jingguo and Li Denghui are all Christians. And actually, those authoritarian or the political leaders need to convert themselves into Christians to hold some power and to win this constituency within their own party. So, which means they're small but powerful. So we cannot forget, the connections between Christianity, authoritarianism, and coloniality. And also, I want to highlight that, although people emphasis on Taiwan trying to be independent in the way that it legalizes marriage, support the LGBT rights to make itself different from China. But I will say, if you look into the Tsai Ing-wen's public speech or the statement, Taiwan's government did not use LGBTQ rights or the sex marriage as the issue, as the diplomatic way to propaganda or to brand itself until the legalization of sex marriage. So which means I think our researchers and the thinkers need to give more credit to the hardworking LGBTQ activists like you and also all the hundreds of thousands unwrapped on the ground. Because no, it's good. Well, it's reality that Taiwan's government is using the pinkwashing or appropriation of the LGBT issue to do some global branding. But actually, it is not a cause; it is a consequence of their own hard right. And finally, I want to respond to the Whitney's comment about the relationship between South Africa and Japan. Sometimes it may be sad to see some affluent or wealthy countries, actually the LGBTQ activists there did not have a chance to receive the US fund or US support. But Taiwan provides a very wonderful alternative example in the way that because Taiwan has been marginalized for so many decades, and also Taiwan was considered as a rich enough country that US fund cannot go into, that creates a unanticipated vacuum of Western impacts. So that's why Taiwan's LGBTQ activism, like Holland Association, along with other or other the parental support, the vacuum creates naturally stepping for the activists and the groups to improve their own momentum and also the path in their own indigenous ways that would not just the followers or the copycats of the American European models. So maybe treat that kind of lack of US aims as the bad thing, and also create some space for the indigenous way to reach the LGBTQ rights in different Asian, African, or Southern ways.
There's some pros and cons, of different influences. I think we're already past time. So we'll just finish letting everybody make their last comments before we end the event. So Whitney, I think you wanted to make a comment, and maybe Yong, if you also want to say something, and we'll end with Sean. So Whitney, please.
Yeah, just to in reference to the question about political power, I think what Taiwan has done really well is the LGBTQI plus movement really being a force for galvanizing political participation among members of the community and their allies. So ahead of elections, you're seeing the movement develop sets of commitments on which they expect candidates to agree to as a part of their platforms once they are in office. You're also seeing the simplification of language and understanding of what candidates stand for which kind of issues, and that gives members of the community really easy, tangible knowledge on what to do on election day, and providing that information from a reputable source such as your national level LGBTQ plus organizations is really, really effective in not only getting members of the community out to vote, but to also ensure that they are making an informed vote. And if you're doing well enough in getting groups to do that in a way that show support for pro-LGBTQI plus candidates versus anti-LGBTQI plus candidates, that's when you start to kind of actually see the tangible results of political power. And so I think that there's some really interesting examples to learn there from Taiwan, but we're also seeing in other parts of the world. But I do think that, because we are also seeing increased representation at the local and national levels, that will also start to translate into forms of political power that I think could be replicated in other parts of the world, including South Korea.
Thank you, Liz. Youngie, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, just to briefly, I think the fact that we are on more time, but still have a lot of things we want to share means how rich this topic is. I hope to communicate and in collaboration with many of you in the future. Thank you.
All right, do you want to end us off?
Yeah. So thank you for your question, and I think that recently I just met a member from the Parliament of Korea and mentioned about that actually like candidates who supports like feminism or LGBT or like anti-discrimination law are not just seeing like a way to action. So that's even are less likely to be choose to become a candidate in the elections, which I feel really sad to hear that, but it's also shown that like the conservative politics in Korea now. Yeah, so and Taiwan, yeah, so I think like Chao mentioned that the public has changed through time, and now like and we only not work with like one big party, but with many different political parties, and try not to be to make like LGBT issues become like one policies. Yeah, and but I must say that we are still trying very hard because like so far, although we already have some progressiveness, but like the like now we only have like 4 out lesbian and bisexual legislators in parliament and legislative fields, and we only have like only a few out city councillors, and so like the percentage of the out LGBT representatives in politics actually is pretty low, still pretty low. Yeah, and so we also have our colleague organization Taiwanese Public Council in trying to like we just held the workshops to teach like people who want to elderly people who want to participate in politics and who want to doing their political campaign how they can do this, and we hope that we can have like more LGBT representatives in politics. Yeah, and although I must say that although like the anti-LGBTQ religious group are only a small amount of people in Taiwan, but because they are church-based, so they do have a lot of like fundings and the human powers, their followers. Yeah, so that is also we are still fighting against. And I didn't mention about one thing is that now we also have an issue about transgender women's rights versus like cisgender women's rights. Which we also feel very sorry because before this, many women, cisgender women, they work with us. Actually, they are pro-LGBT and they support same-sex marriage a lot. And so I think that we are still trying to find a way to for both sides to communicate and try to find a way that's to know about that. Actually, this is not a like like cisgender women versus transgender women. Actually, we are all like the victims of like patriarchy. Yes, we can find a way to to find a way to support transgender rights and also like women's safety.
No, thank you so much. All right, I think we'll end it there because we've already gone way over time. But thank you so much for your patience and also free to come up and ask our panelists questions after the fact. Thank you so much, Whitney and Youngin, for joining us. I know that both of you are in very inconvenient time zones for this event, so thank you so much. And yeah, so
Can we get a photo with all of them before they are virtually done?
yeah, and you guys stand a little bit for